preparing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nהיה b'dvarai.
Amen.
Okay. Should be live now. And back to Zoom meeting. Okay. Admit. I'm going to continue recording. Okay. So welcome everyone. We're going to give a few more minutes until this starts. And I'll call Leib Moshe. Sometimes like to call. Whoever would like to is welcome to, you're all welcome to turn on your cameras. And I'm just going to mute everyone so I have a clear background. As you have any, if you have any questions or anything, you are more than welcome to unmute yourself. Hi, Leib Moshe. I know sometimes you like a call. We are getting ready to start now. Okay, perfect. Okay, we'll give another minute or two for everyone to log in and then we'll jump in. Okay, I'm gonna hope that everybody got there. Tati, you're on mute, so if there was something that you wanted to say, you could unmute yourself.
Hello, Rabbi Shmuley. My name is Mami.
Okie dokie. Let me just text.
I passed on the information to Levi.
Okay, great. Thank you. What's his name? Rabino, it's Mordechai. Starting now, and then I'm gonna also text Joan. It's a different time than usual. We're starting at 8:30 today instead of 8 o'clock. So just gonna send these people their messages in case they didn't get the information. Okay. Okie dokie. Okay, so welcome to lesson 6 of This Can Happen. This is the final lesson. And before we begin, today's lesson. Oh, here comes Mordechai. Okay. Just wait for him to populate. And Barry Lynn is here. Okay, you guys are here. Okay. Mordechai, Barry, Antonina, and then Leib Moshe is going to be on in a moment. Today's lesson is a little different. But very much the same. It is very much the same in that today is the 6th lesson.
Chabad//Mashiach.
It is also a little bit different because
you can sit here.
Today is the 6th lesson, and we are left with a gaping hole on our screens. Mami, my dear mother, who joined us for all of our courses from our very first lesson of Journey of the Soul up until the last lesson 5 of the Mashiach course, this current course that we're part of, has journeyed on her soul with her soul and is going to meet us again when Mashiach comes. And it brings me great pleasure, unfortunately, to bring with you some of my siblings that are here to fill that void. My father is here on my mother's screen. That's Tati. And my brother, some of my sisters are joining as well. So this is going to be a great tribute to her. Baruch is here. And my brother Zalmi is here. So this is going to be beautiful. She would be very proud of us all learning this. So I want to also start, as usual, by thanking Rabbi Lieberman for making the sponsorships available for today's course. And we are going to go with our round of gratitude. I'm going to start. There are so many things that I was thinking of earlier about what am I going to say. The first thing that I want to say, more on the lighter side, is that I'm grateful that my daughter, who is not yet 2 years old, is big enough and smart enough that the past few nights she's been saying, I don't want to go to sleep. I want to come out of my crib. I want to come out and play. So Baruch Hashem for that stage. And on a more serious note, I want to share my gratitude to my mother for the confidence she gave me and the siblings that she gave me, the upbringing that she gave me, that helped me come to this place that I'm able to share all of this Torah and all of this learning with all of you. So thank you, Mommy.
Oh,
Next up, Mordechai. What are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for life and health, even more so now.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mordechai. Joan, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for every day of my journey here.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joan. Barry, what are you and Carol grateful for today? Oh, I'll ask you first. I don't want you to talk for her.
No, she's unfortunately not with me right now. But I'm grateful for having the opportunity to have met such a fine, amazing Torah lady as your mother.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
It's beautiful.
What about Auntie Nina? What are you grateful for today? Please unmute yourself and let us know. You're on mute, I think. Oh, I should ask you to unmute. Okay. Ask to unmute. Now there should be a pop-up on your screen that you can. There we
Thank
go.
you. Good. I have a very, very small handheld smartphone, so it's difficult to see. Anyway, I'm grateful for what I have, and especially for my family, who's my sister's family and your family, and Joan and all the gentlemen there. She's also your family. I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful for the family I have, including my sister in Shemaim, who I still have. That gaping hole in the heart you were talking about is not there for me. I have that is quite full with her love, but I'm grateful. The hole is in the physical, so we're going to fix that. And learning from you, and everything will be good and whole and united. I'm grateful for being with those I love and
Thank
others.
you. Thank you, Auntie Nina. And Leib Moshe, what are you grateful for today?
And I'm always grateful for my family, for my daughter and my 2 daughters and my grandchildren. And that's my biggest blessing.
Beautiful. Tati, what are you grateful for today? If you can unmute yourself and share.
I'm very grateful that despite the circumstances, I have such lovely children who are helping spread light all over the world.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tati. And my brother Levi is stuck in solitary confinement in Sydney, Australia on his way back home. Levi, what are you grateful for down there?
I guess I could say I'm grateful for the upbringing I was given, that 10 days into this 14-day quarantine, I can still be positive and have that positive outlook.
You two don't look anything alike.
Oh, where are you, Lily?
Okay, Zalmi, would you like to share something that you're grateful for today?
Yeah. Start video. Here we are. I am grateful. 1 minute. It's just that there. I'm very grateful that today I'm feeling a lot better. I feel like I've walked on a journey and that the journey has been created by those who preceded me and those who will come after me. And very thankful. I'm filled with a lot of emotion of gratitude that my siblings and parents have been here for me, and aunts and uncles and community at large, and have helped me really ease through the past 7-8 days in a happy and supportive way.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. So today, as we jump in, but we're going to start with a story as usual. Mordechai, hold your seat. There is a man and he walks into a bar and he's a big anti-Semite. And he sees next to him, standing by one of the tables, a man with a skull cap and long side locks and strings flying out from his shirt. Doesn't take a genius to know that this man is a Jew. So, being the anti-Semite that he was, he goes over to the bartender and he says, "A round of drinks for everyone here except for the Jew." Okay, bartender obliges. He fills up drinks for everyone, everyone gets a shot of whatever they wanted, except the Jew who was left out. And the Jew turns to the anti-Semite, smiles and says, "Thank you." Nothing that can make him anti-Semite more angry than that. He screams to the bartender, "Another round of drinks for everyone except that stupid Jew." Okay? He obliges, and everybody gets a round of drinks except for the Jew. And now this Jew, as the drinks are being poured, the smile on the Jew's face is getting bigger and bigger. And the anti-Semite is getting angry and angry. And at the end of the round, the Jew comes over to him and the Jew says, "Thank you very much, sir." And now this anti-Semite can't handle it anymore. He turns to the bartender. He said, "What's wrong with that guy?" He said, "Oh, him? He's the owner."
Bravo.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
we've spoken so far. We've gone on a deep dive. And we've learned in lesson 1 about how the world is physically getting ready for Mashiach. Lessons 2, 3, and 4, we spoke about the purpose of creation. How every action that we have is actually making this world in line with its purpose of spirituality. And every mitzvah that we do changes the entire world. And then in lesson 5, we spoke about who is Mashiach. How do we know if the Mashiach is that we're seeing is the real Mashiach? What are the identifying features? And what is the process of him coming? Today, what we're going to look at is what does the world look like when Mashiach comes? So the first thing is the anti-Semitism. You know, what's that going to be? How is the world going to change? Are we going to all of a sudden be floating, in clouds at the end of a rainbow somewhere with unicorns and pink hearts? What's going to be? What are we going to be looking forward to? And what is going to change and what's going to stay the same? So the first thing that we need to understand is that today's lesson, especially we only have 90 minutes, is going to be somewhat like a movie trailer. You won't know the whole story, but hopefully you'll know enough that you want to watch the whole thing. There's a lot that we can't know. We're going to get as good of a glimpse as we can, but there's a lot of things, and we've mentioned this briefly before from the Rambam, that there's a lot that we won't know until it happens. But the things that we do know, we're going to talk about today. So, before we jump in, there's a famous question out there. I mean, if Moses would step out of his grave in the desert and come to one of our houses and see the Judaism that we have, would he recognize it? Probably not. Would he be happy with us the way we are? Would he eat in our kitchens? Who knows? And when you look around and you see the amount of politics and fighting, and this is the way we're supposed to be doing Judaism, or this is the way we're supposed to be doing Judaism, or that's the way we're supposed to be doing Judaism, and the amount of infighting that there is, you might think that, well, God might be a little bit disappointed. So here's a beautiful mashal, a beautiful parable that I heard that really drives home the point. There was a guy, he was married and he had a few young children. And he tells his wife, please make supper. And he gives her a list of things that he wants her to do. So I'm going to be right back. And he goes out to do some errands. And he's gone for 3,333 years. He comes back home after 3,500 years. And he comes back home and he opens the door. And there, sitting on the table, is a bowl of soup. And he comes over to the table and he sits down and he starts taking from the soup, and it's cold. And then he hears from the kitchen his children are arguing. This one says he likes chicken soup. The other one says, no, he likes potato soup. You don't remember? And the other one says, nah, it's cream of mushroom. That's his favorite. Do you think that this father would be angry that the soup was cold and that his children don't even know what kind of soup he likes? Possibly, but much more likely is that he will be overcome with love for his children and extremely, extremely impressed that 3,500 years later, what are they talking about? Which kind of soup he likes. And it's his fault that the soup is cold. The same thing is, when Hashem is looking down at us, he's not, God forbid, disappointed in any way. We're all trying to do the right thing. We're all trying to do every extra mitzvah that we can and learn every extra mitzvah. Whether you're Sephardi or Ashkenazi, Hashem is going to be mighty happy that we're here and we're learning and we're trying to do more. Let's jump in to text number 1a. Mordechai, would you like to read for us text number 1a? The first subject that we're going to be looking at is the Jewish-Gentile relations. What's going to happen to the world at large?
What page is that?
That will be 247, Mordechai.
1a.
1a, please.
Do not presume.
This is from the Rambam Maimonides.
Yeah. Do not presume that in the Messianic age, any facet of the world's nature will change or that there will be innovations in the work of creation. The world will continue according to its pattern.
So pattern is an interesting translation. The way I would translate it is it's normative course, the way things have been accustomed to. So the Rambam says that there's nothing that's going to change. Don't think that there's going to be any miracles or anything changing. So I ask you, based on what we've learned in the last 5 weeks, does that sound pretty much on target, or does that sound a little bit different than what we've been saying?
I think different.
So Mordechai thinks different. And on the one hand, it's a little different. On the one hand, it's a little similar. But to make the contrast nice and stark, Joan, would you like to read text number 1b? This is from Isaiah, the prophet.
The wolf will dwell with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the young goat. The calf and the yearling will be with the lion, and a little child will lead them all.
Okay. So what does that sound? Does that sound like a miracle, or does that sound like the zoo?
Sounds like a miracle.
Sounds like a miracle to me. Last time they tried putting a sheep into the wolf's cage in the zoo, it was suffer. So what's going on over here, and what is the Rambam's view for us? The Rambam tells us that he set out a view of what Mashiach is going to look like. But if we look at the prophets, it seems to be that there are going to be some real miracles and things that are going to change drastically. Now, everything that we spoke about in lesson number 1 and lessons 2, 3, that we touched on in lessons 2, 3, and 4 can be explained in a very rational way. We were speaking about eradicating disease, and we spoke about how there are certain scientists who believe that aging is a disease as well that will be cured. We learned about the prosthetic limbs. We learned about the artificial eyes, ears, even voice boxes. So those things we can say are going to be a miracle, but it's going to be a kind of miracle that there's an old lady and she's standing in the street and a mugger comes over with a big old knife and he says, give me all your money and give me all your, and all of a sudden, 2 blocks away, the kids were playing baseball and one kid hit it out of the park and the baseball comes and knocks the mugger in the face and he goes out cold and the old grandma can run away. Is that a miracle?
Yes.
It's a miracle, but it's a miracle that we can go back and explain exactly how everything happened. And that's the kind of miracle that seems to be that we were talking about all those other things. But when it comes to this miracle, it seems to be the kind of miracle that the mugger would have turned into a stone. You know, the wolves aren't busy with national proclamations trying to eradicate disease or war or any of those things. So let's look, Leib Moshe, would you like to read for us text number 1c, how the Rambam explains this and all the other seemingly miraculous propositions from the prophets?
1c.
Yes.
The wolf will dwell with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the young goat. These words are an allegory and parable. The interpretation of the prophecy is that the Jews will dwell at peace together with those wicked Gentiles who had sought to devour them like a wolf and a leopard. They will no longer steal or destroy, but live at peace with Israel. Similarly, other messianic prophecies of this kind are allegories. Only in the messianic era will we understand their true meaning.
So it seems to be from here. Thank you, Leib Moshe. What is this? It's like they say it's hard to explain puns to kleptomaniacs because they always take things literally.
Ouch.
Oh gosh. Ay.
So the Rambam is saying, if you see something that seems too good to be true, if it seems to be a miracle, so then don't take it literally. Now, that is not a full comprehensive understanding of the Rambam's opinion. We'll get back to that at the end of the lesson. What is the Rambam's opinion? Because the big question we're going to have with this is the resurrection of the dead, which is a big miracle, and the Rambam clearly believes with. So we'll hold that thought till the end of the class. But for now, the Rambam says...
Allegory.
Sorry?
That is not an allegory.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
So over here, what the Rambam is saying is that everything is going to be the same. What's going to change is that there's going to be, we're going to see soon, we're going to touch more precisely on the points, but everything that we learned in lesson 1, the world is going to progress until we're all living peacefully. And when we're all living peacefully, we can all study Torah and do mitzvahs, connecting with God. And that's what's going to happen. That's what the Rambam is saying. And if you see any prophecies that seem to be miraculous, it's probably some kind of an allegory, similar to the way he explained this verse in Isaiah, that everyone is going to be living kindly with each other. The anti-Semites are going to walk past all their baggage and come to appreciate the Jewish people and even support the Jewish people.
We're far away from that era.
So some people are, and slowly but surely we're working towards it. Text number 2. Barry, do you have your book with you? Can you read for us text number 2, which is also from the Rambam?
Our sages taught there will be no difference between the current age and the Messianic era, except the emancipation from our subjugation to the Gentile governments.
So thank you. This is again along the same lines that what is going to change is that the world is going to become a peaceful place. Now, many people want to argue that we have this. There is no more subjugation to the Gentile people because we have Israel, we have our autonomous state. The only issue with that is that if Israel was truly an autonomous state without subjugation to any of the Gentile nations, I think that we'd be running it a little bit differently. The fact that we don't have free reign and free access to the Temple Mount, the fact that we don't have free access to the caves of where the forefathers are buried, the cave of Shechem where Joseph is buried, or Mother Rachel's tomb, shows us that there is still a lack in this point. There are still many Gentile nations that the Israeli government answers to. So while, thank God, there are many people who are safe and secure because they are protected in the land of Israel, we are still not fully autonomous. And I don't follow Israeli politics, but it seems that the Jewish Israeli government is soon going to be joined by a strong party of Arabs who will have a say in what goes on in Israel. So unfortunately, we're not yet there, but when Mashiach comes, we are going to have no one to answer to other than God. And then we'll be able to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. So far, two things we know. Number one is that nothing is going to change in a miraculous way. Everything is going to be a slow progression until the world is going to be at peace. And number two, we are not going to have to answer to anyone else. We will not be subjugated under the rule of any foreign kingdom. We will be free to rule ourselves. So all we have to do is become a better society. We remove the hatred, and then everything else falls into play beautifully. The next thing is we're going to look at some more pieces from the Rambam. Text number 3, I'm going to read. The Messianic king will arise and renew the Davidic dynasty. And we spoke in lesson 5 why it had to be the Davidic dynasty and why it had to be the King Mashiach, restoring it to its initial sovereignty. Now, here's another thing. He will build the temple. We spoke about that a little bit last week. And gather the dispersed of Israel. We're going to speak about that more as well. In his days, the observance of all the statutes, all of the mitzvahs will return to their previous state. So these are 4 points that we're going to touch upon now. About the Beis HaMikdash, and we have a few pages from the Haggadahs in here. If you look at figure 6.1, we are looking forward that when Mashiach comes, we are going to have the Beis HaMikdash again. For those who don't have your books, this is a picture from the Aaron Wolf Herlingen. He made a Passover Haggadah with pictures. This was printed in Vienna in 1730. The accuracy of the actual building is not so accurate, but we see over here that it was a central theme that, together with the belief in the coming of Mashiach, is the belief that there will be a Beis HaMikdash once again. Now, you may ask that it seems to be a big miracle. Right now, there are one or more mosques on the Temple Mount in the place where the Beis HaMikdash is. How could you tell me that it's a normal and natural order that the Beis HaMikdash is going to be coming on the Temple Mount? How is it going to be that the Arabs are going to support and are going to help us build the Beis HaMikdash? They're going to destroy their own thing, and they are going to be willing and able and helpful for us to go ahead and build the Beis HaMikdash. So for that, let's look at the Medrash, text number 4. Mordechai, would you like to read for us text number 4?
Sure. If the nations of the world knew how beneficial the Holy Temple was for them, they would have surrounded it with fortifications in order to guard it.
From the temple, thank you, Mordechai, from the Beis HaMikdash, from the temple, and we have a little video about the temple that we can show at the end of the class, came blessings, protection, security for the entire world. And the Medrash tells us that if they would have only realized that the sacrifices we brought on the festival of Sukkot, on the festival of Tabernacles, if they would have only known the blessing and protection it brought them, they would have never let the Babylonians or the Romans attack the temple. They would have surrounded it with garrisons and fortified it to make sure that it would not be destroyed. So how is it possible that it was destroyed? Because when we're living in exile, the truth is concealed, and we don't realize what's going on. But when Mashiach comes, and the world will be filled with the knowledge of God, that everybody is going to clearly see the truth, the Goyim are going to know that the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, is going to be the source of all of their goodness, is going to be the source of much abundance and wealth, and they will gladly help us build the Beis HaMikdash. So that too is going to happen, and that too can happen in a natural way as well. And if we look for
That's
text number 5,
that's a very fantastic way of looking at things.
explain.
It's politically unrealistic. With
It's pol-
with the mosque on the Temple Mount, the Arabs will never let the Jews build on that spot. Not
The
without a
Arabs will
major
never let the
war.
Jews build on that spot so long as they believe that their mosque is what's bringing them their goodness and their kindness and their abundance. But as soon as they realize that all good that comes to them is going to be coming through the Holy Temple, they will gladly get rid of that.
Again, that's a fantastic concept.
So the question is, are they going to realize the truth? So
No,
that we're going to
never.
look back. Sorry?
Never.
Well,
Okay.
it's
They are
always,
our implacable enemies.
it's always
Oh, just a
possible.
minute.
So I'm gonna pause this discussion. I'm gonna pause this discussion right here because this is going to very much derail us. But Leib Moshe, if we
Yeah.
look at some of the things that we looked at in lesson number 1 about famine, about war, things that even 200 years ago looked even possibly more impossible than the Arabs taking down their Al-Aqsa Mosque, then it may be possible. It may happen.
How
And
about
another
Korach?
option is that the rest of the world realizes that it's not the place for their mosque and goes to war against the Arabs. We don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but we do know that it will happen, and we do know that the Beis HaMikdash, that the Messianic world is going to be complete with a temple, the third temple that is going to be rebuilt on the Temple Mount. For the rest of the details, how that's going to happen there, I think should save that discussion for afterwards. But Leib Moshe, could you read for me text number 5 from Isaiah?
Okay. The word that Isaiah, son of Amos, prophesied concerning Judah and Jerusalem. It shall be at the end of the days that the mountain of God's home shall be firmly established at the top of the mountains. It shall be raised above the hills, and all the nations shall stream to it. Many peoples shall go, and they shall say, come, let us go up to God's mountain, to the house of the God of Jacob, and let him teach us in his ways, and we will go in his paths.
Thank you, Leib Moshe. So we see from here that Isaiah is telling us that all of the nations are going to be in a space where they are going to come to learn the truth from the house of truth, from the house of God, from the Beis HaMikdash. Now, here's an interesting thing. The Rambam speaks about the ingathering of the exiles. Now, we know that many times has there been aliyahs to Israel after the Spanish Inquisition, many times in the pogroms, most notably recently after the Holocaust. There have been many times in history, that the Jewish people have fled to Israel. So the question is, why is that different? What is the difference between that and the ingathering of the exiles that happens when Mashiach comes? Why is it something to write home about? We're always looking to flee our enemies and to run to Israel. So to understand this, we have to take a little bit of a step back, which is that the Rambam, Maimonides, writes everything in very clear and very organized fashion. He took the entire Talmud and took out all the parts that were related to Jewish law and put them into his book. Every single word and every single letter that's there is there for a particular reason, and actual laws are learned out of it. Books and books and books have been written upon the Rambam. Why did he use this word instead of another word? Why did he add a letter here? Why did he take away a letter there? Why did he bring this word? And why did he omit the other word? So if we look back at text number 3, that was on page 251, it says he will build the temple and gather the dispersed of Israel. And that is very precise. The Rambam is telling us that the ingathering of the dispersed of Israel that happens when Mashiach comes, happens after the rebuilding of the temple. And it's going to be a different kind of ingathering of the exiles. That as opposed to all the other ingatherings of the exile that happened because we were fleeing our enemies, this is going to be because we are drawn to the holiness, to the sanctity of the Beis HaMikdash. So the Beis HaMikdash is going to be built beforehand, and then everyone else is going to come and flock to Jerusalem, flock to Israel in troves. Now, here is a very big question that many of you may ask. Who here has heard of the 10 lost tribes?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Good. The 10 lost tribes. Now, who are they? Where are they? And what happens to them when Mashiach comes? Are they Jewish? Are they not Jewish? What's the deal? What's the story? So, interesting thing is that many different peoples over the history, over the last many hundred years, have claimed that they were part of these 10 lost tribes. There was, I understand, some group of people in Japan that they had a custom that once a year they would run a goat off the end of a cliff. And that's what they did every year. And then one day someone told them that the Jewish people used to have a custom in temple times that they would throw a goat off the edge of a cliff, the Sa'ir LaAzazel. So they came along thinking that they were Jewish. Is it possible that they were? It's possible, but they had assimilated to such a degree that it's possible that originally they started with Jewish roots, but probably are not Jewish at this point in time, not born to Jewish mothers.
No, they just enjoyed chasing goats.
Then we have other people. There's a group in somewhere in I don't remember which country, somewhere in Syria maybe, where they're Muslims, but instead of the traditional Muslim or Arabic pronunciation of the names like Ibrahim, they say them with the Jewish pronunciation like Avraham. So maybe they're Jewish, maybe they're not. It's hard to know. There are many different people from many different places with many different traditions who claim that they are from the 10 lost tribes. So what is the history of the 10 lost tribes? King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, had a son whose name was Rechavam, I believe. And during his days, we know the map of Israel and how it was divided among the different tribes. And during his days, the southern tribes, which were Judah and Benjamin, Yehuda and Binyamin. Tati, am I getting the right ones? Yehuda and Binyamin were in the south? Yeah. Yehuda and Binyamin, Judah and Benjamin were in the south, and the rest of the tribes were in the north. And the tribes that were in the north, help me out with the English word here, they made their own kingship, and they removed themselves from the reign of the rest of the Jews.
Kingdom.
What's the word? No, when you pull yourself away and make yourself your own
succession. They succeeded
Thank you.
And made a new kingdom.
Thank you. They succeeded from the rest of the Jewish people, and they made their own kingdom in the north.
They succeeded in seceding.
Okay, they seceded. Whatever the word is, they broke off and they had their own king. Sancherev, the king of Ashur, the Assyrian king Sancherev, did what Napoleon tried to do, Alexander the Great, and he was on a mission to conquer the world. He was a brilliant man. And as he came and conquered a new country, he took all of its inhabitants and moved them somewhere else. Because when you conquer somebody's place and you're in there, and they know the lay of the land, they know the ins and outs, they know the topography, the hiding places, they have the advantage, and it's very possible for them to make a revolt. If you take them and you make them feel foreign and you move them somewhere else, they can't really have an uprising because they're the newbies on the block. So that's what he did whenever he went anywhere. So when he came into Israel, he came from the north, and he conquered the land of the 10 tribes, that were in the north, and he took them and he moved them elsewhere on the globe. The prophets tell us it was somewhere far in Africa, parts of Africa or Asia. When he came to the south and he was outside of Jerusalem, at that point, God made a miracle, and an angel came in the nighttime, and half of his army or more, a lot of his army died, and they fled, and so they ended up taking over to a certain degree Jerusalem, but they never displaced its citizens. So that's the history. That's how we have the 10 lost tribes. There is a very mystical medrash that talks about a certain river called the Sambatyon that throws stones up and down, and you can't get there unless, and that I'm not sure about. And I guess we'll find out. There are interesting stories about the Sambatyon, the legend of the Sambatyon River. But for today, what we're going to talk about is the more natural route, which is just that they were moved somewhere else. So there is an argument, a difference of opinion in the Gemara. What is the history of those people? Remember, this was before the Second Temple. And this was before the times of the Second Temple, which means that most of the Judaism that we have today that was coded, that was written down, happened after they had already left. And so they do not necessarily have the same structure of the written law, the books that were written down the way that we have them. So chances are that they forgot everything that they had as they were being moved from place to place without any texts to keep them going. So let's look at the Mishnah in text number 6. Barry, would you like to read for us the Mishnah in text number 6, page 255?
The 10 tribes are not destined to return, as it is stated. God cast them into another land like this day. Just as the day passes, never to return, so have they gone into exile, never to return. This is the view of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer stated, like this day, just as the day darkens and then brightens, so the 10 tribes who experience darkness will in the future experience light.
So aren't those two opposing views?
Yep. There are two opposing views, both explaining the same verse. One says that they won't come back. The other says that they will come back. So the question is, to what degree have they assimilated? Are they still Jewish or are they not Jewish? Either way, whichever way we put it, the fact of the matter is that there will be 12 tribes when Mashiach comes. How so? There are a few different ways. Number one is that it's possible that there were members of the north, members of the 10 tribes who lived down south. And there were members and representatives of each of the tribes. Another one is that the prophet Yirmiyahu, who lived about 100 years after after this whole story, I believe, or maybe it was after he went on a mission to get the 10 lost tribes, and you can read about this in the prophets, in the Nevi'im. And he went back, and he wasn't successful at bringing all of them back, but he was able to bring back messengers or representatives from each of the 10 tribes. So today we still have among us, not only from Judah and Benjamin, but also descendants of the other 10 tribes. The other option is that, like Rabbi Eliezer says, these 10 tribes will all come back, we'll find them, and we will once again be reunited. So the 10 lost tribes, it's one of those let's wait and see attitude towards them. But we definitely do know that there will be 12 tribes when Mashiach comes because of the representatives that were not taken away and assimilated.
And if I may say, they also found the Falashas in Ethiopia.
Yes. Yes. So, summarize what we've just gone through now is we spoke about the Davidic dynasty. We spoke about that when Mashiach is going to come, there is going to be a temple, that there all of the exiles are going to come back to Eretz Yisrael, to Israel, not because we are running away from any of our foes, but because we are going to join what is happening in Israel, in Eretz Yisrael. We also spoke about the 10 lost tribes. Next up, we are going to speak about changes in the Jewish civil law system. So, and if you look at figure 6.2, you'll see a map of Israel divided into all 12 of its things. So the Sanhedrin. Who were the Sanhedrin? Number one, about the Jewish law system, is that we're going to talk about the Sanhedrin. We're also going to talk about the all of the commandments, which is a point that we mentioned in the Rambam, in that text that we learned before, that all of the statutes will be like they were previously. So, who were the Sanhedrin?
They were like the
judicial.
Jewish Supreme Court.
Exactly. Very good, Moshe. The Sanhedrin is like the Jewish Supreme Court. So, Mordechai, this is home turf for you. The Jewish court and litigation system was incredibly complex. Every town, every hamlet, every city that had at least 130 Jews had a small little tribunal. People who had monetary litigations would come to them, and people who wanted to know what was the law, what was the halacha, what did Jewish law say? Are you allowed to do this on Shabbos? Or are you not? Would come to them. We also had in more the more established cities, you had a I don't know what the English word is, but a court of 23 judges. They were allowed to discuss, they were allowed to take care of anything monetary, also about teaching the law to the people, and they also were able to take into their system cases that had to do with lives. So if there was a murder or those kind of things that have to do with the loss of a life, if the person is convicted, they will be killed. So you have to have a court of 23. And then on the Temple Mount, we had 3 courts. I believe there were 2 of 23 and 1 of 71, if I'm not mistaken. So the way the Jewish law system worked is that if you wanted to know something, either you wanted to have a dispute solved or you wanted to know what was the right thing to do, you would go to your local tribunal. If they knew, they told you. If they didn't know, then they would go to the regional court of 23. If they knew, they told them and everybody went home. If they didn't know, the person who had asked the question, together with the tribunal, together with this court of 23, would all make their way to Jerusalem. And at the gate of Jerusalem was another court of 23 judges who were great scholars. And they would ask the question. If they knew, they would tell them. If they didn't know, then the individual who asked the question, together with the tribunal, together with the regional court, together with the court that was sitting at the gate of Jerusalem, would all go together to the Temple Mount. And over there was another court of 23 great scholars, and they would ask the question. If they knew the answer, they would tell them. And if they didn't know the answer, all of them together would go into one of the special chambers inside the temple where the Supreme Court sat. There were 71 judges. And they would ask the question. If they knew, they would tell them. And if not, then these 71 greatest Jewish minds of the time would discuss between themselves and come to a conclusion. And then everybody would go back home. So that's the way the judicial system worked back in the day. So the Sanhedrin disbanded in, I believe, the year 360 of the Common Era. They were forced out of Jerusalem when the temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. Sorry, by the Romans. And they were trekking from place to place. And in the year 360, I believe, of the Common Era, you can check that up afterwards, what exact year it was. they disbanded. They were, at that point, they were in the city of Tiberias, Tiberia in Hebrew, and they disbanded. When Mashiach is going to come, we learned that Elijah the prophet is going to reinstitute the smicha so that we're going to be able to have a Supreme Court. And what we're adding to that today is that they don't go back straight to the city of Jerusalem, straight to the Temple Mount, straight to the temple. They are going to first convene. Their first meeting of convention is going to be in the city of Tiberia where they left off. And from there, they're going to work backwards to the temple. And we see this in text number 7 about the Sanhedrin coming back together. Joan, would you like to read text number 7 on page 256?
I will restore your judges as in the days of old, and your counselors as in the beginning. Afterward, you shall be called the city of righteousness, faithful city.
Thank you very much.
So what is he referring to as the faithful city? Tiberias or Jerusalem, or is it generally meant to mean any of the communities that have these tribunals?
So that we are talking about Jerusalem.
Okay, thank you.
That is talking about Jerusalem, and we're talking about the Supreme Court. So interesting. How many, Paul, how many mitzvahs are there in the Torah?
613.
613. So how many of those are the don't do mitzvahs, the negative commandments?
248? Oh. 248 and 365.
248 and 365. So 365 are the negative commandments. So those are applicable always, that we're never allowed to do them. But let's look at the positive commandments. There are 248 positive commandments in the Bible. Take a guess. How many of those are we able to fulfill currently in our state of exile?
Less than half?
Correct.
How much less?
Anybody want to go for a guess?
124.
87 of the mitzvahs.
Oh, well.
87 of the mitzvahs are still applicable today.
Sort of like 30%.
My connection is unstable. I hope I don't lose you guys. Yeah, like 30%. 30% approximately of the mitzvahs are applicable today. So when the Rambam says that when Mashiach comes, all of the mitzvahs are going to apply, that's because many of the mitzvahs have to do with a temple. For example, the pilgrimage, the yearly pilgrimage 3 times a year. Many of the mitzvahs have to do with the majority of the Jewish people residing in the land of Israel. For example, the mitzvah of Hakel, where all the Jewish people would come to hear the Torah being taught by the king, by the Jewish king. And for that, you needed to have a Jewish king as well. So our circumstances in exile do not allow us to take opportunity of many of the mitzvahs. But when Mashiach comes, we will have the opportunity to fulfill all 248 of the positive mitzvahs, because we will have a Sanhedrin, we will have a king, we will have a holy temple, and we will all be in the land of Israel. And so the greatest part of this is actually, or one of the greatest parts is the Sanhedrin, who whenever there's a dispute, we go to the Sanhedrin. That's why after the Sanhedrin was disbanded, is really where all of these differences between the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim started. Because until then, if anyone had a question, you followed the process that we spoke about before. You went up, and there was one leading authority, the Supreme Court, that decided what's going to be. It wasn't like America, where every state has their Supreme Court, and you can have different rules in different states. If you didn't know, if you knew because you were taught, so then you gave the answer. If you didn't know, you couldn't decide on your own what the answer should be. You went to the Supreme Court. So when the Sanhedrin is going to come back, they are the only ones who can make legally binding decisions that affect the entire Jewish people. So let's look at text number 8, which speaks about them going back first to Tiberias. Mordechai, could you read for us text number 8?
Sure. Originally, when the Holy Temple was built, the Supreme Sanhedrin would hold session in its chamber of hewn stone. When things went awry, the Sanhedrin went into exile, convening in various locations, 10 in total, the last being in Tiberias. Since then, the Sanhedrin has not reconvened. We have a tradition that the Sanhedrin will be restored in Tiberias first, and from there it will relocate to the temple.
Thank you. So the reinstitution of the Sanhedrin is going to be pivotal for Jewish law. And one of the most interesting examples, which is one of the most basic, which is actually quite complicated, is the calendar. Now, the calendar, it seems, is very simple, right? The Jewish calendar, we know that it's very complex, the way it was set up. But we have a calendar. We know exactly when Rosh Hashanah is going to be this year. We know exactly when Yom Kippur is going to be, when Passover will be. We know when to start making cleaning our kitchens for Passover. We know everything. We can tell everything for the next 100 years, 200, 300. We have a set cycle of 19-year cycle, and it just follows itself. So how complicated already could a calendar be? And here comes the answer. We all know that the Jewish calendar is based on the moon. That you look at the moon, and when the new moon is seen, the moon is just a little sliver. It disappears, and then when it's seen, that's the first day of the new month. The way it used to be is that they would rely on the word of witnesses. You would have witnesses who would see that new moon. So all you moon watchers out here, or everyone who wants the, your stargazers, you would be sitting there. I don't know if they had telescopes back then. I don't know if you're allowed to use telescopes because it has to be seen to the naked eye. I'm going to leave that for the Supreme Court to decide. But you would be sitting there and you would see the new moon and you would run off to the Supreme Court and say, I saw the new moon. They would ask you some questions, and then there was a big feast, and they would make that day the first day of the month. Which means that until the month started, you didn't know whether the previous month had 29 or 30 days. The lunar month, it takes the moon 29 and a half days to get around the earth. Or to be more precise, it's 29 days, 11 hours, and almost 12 hours. So not every month, you can't have a month of 29 and a half days. Some months are going to be 29, some months are going to be 30.
Like now.
Right. So this month is Rosh Chodesh, is 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. This month has 30 days. Therefore, the 30th day and the first day of the next month are special days. So what happens is that when we go back to, or let's work forwards. So the way it worked in temple times is that nobody knew, and Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the month of Tishrei, you didn't know that it was going to be Rosh Hashanah until it was the day of Rosh Hashanah. Can you imagine that? You couldn't you couldn't prepare and say, I'm driving down to the kids and I'm going to be there on Thursday, and then Rosh Hashanah is going to start on Sunday. You had no idea what day Rosh Hashanah was going to start. You knew it was going to be either Monday or Tuesday, either Wednesday or Thursday, but you didn't know exactly which date it was. So let's say your child was having their bar mitzvah and you wanted to be organized and send out the invitation 2 months in advance so that everybody could RSVP. You wouldn't know what date to write it for. You could say it's going to be the 13th day of the month of Kislev, but you don't know whether it's going to be Wednesday or Thursday. And if you're 2 months out, it could even be on Tuesday.
And Adar Sheni, like your mommy was born in Adar Sheni?
Right. And then we have the leap years, because the lunar month had the lunar year has 356 days. 355 days. The solar year has the lunar year has 354 days. The solar year is 11 days longer than the lunar year.
360.
Really?
Yeah. So what ends up happening is that every few years we have to add an extra month. Approximately every 3 years we add an extra month. to the Jewish calendar, so that Passover is always going to be in the spring, because otherwise you'd have to do your spring cleaning in the winter, and that wouldn't be comfortable.
Right.
Except in Hobart.
So, well, we're going into a long discussion about the calendar. What happened is that before the Sanhedrin disbanded, a great foresighted man by the name of Hillel realized that if there's going to be no Sanhedrin, there will be no Jewish holidays. Because only the Sanhedrin has the power, only the Sanhedrin. Okay, thank you, Mordechai. You'll catch the rest on the recording. Have a great evening, and thank you for joining.
Hey, thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
Take
Take care.
Mordecai.
Be well.
You too, but you well.
Before you leave, spoiler.
Shmuley,
The
I'm
next-
going to do the same. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you, Miriam Simcha. Next class
Very
is going
nice
to
to be here.
October, and it is called
Oh, Miriam
Outsmarting Anti-Semitism.
Oh, very interesting. And it was good to
Okay.
hear everybody's voices. Have a good night.
Thank you. Take care.
Good night from Antonina.
Bye-bye. Yes. Bye-bye.
So he realized that if there's not going to be a Sanhedrin, a Supreme Court, then you can't have any of the Jewish holidays. The Supreme Court are the only people who are authorized to establish a new month. And all of the Jewish holidays only work if you have an established month. So he went ahead and he established a calendar, brilliant calendar that we could have two 4-hour courses on. And it's a brilliant calendar, but that's set in stone until Mashiach comes. That'll take us until Mashiach comes. There's only a very slight inaccuracy of a few minutes every 19 years, but it'll take us till Mashiach comes. So when the Sanhedrin is going to be reintroduced, the entire calendar is going to change. Okay, so to summarize what we just spoke about, that when Mashiach comes, all of the mitzvahs are going to be properly observed by virtue of the fact that, number one, we will have the opportunity to do all of those mitzvahs circumstantially, and number two, the Sanhedrin is going to be back in its full power. Next up is Armageddon, Apocalypse. Many of you have heard that at the end of days are going to be brought on by wars and horrible things, catastrophes. Is that a Jewish view? So the first thing is that the word Armageddon and the word apocalypse come from Greek, from Latin, from Christian sources, and have no place in Judaism. What we do have is the war of Gog and Magog. Gog is the name of a country, Magog is their ruler, and there is going to be a war that they are going to uprise against their king, and it's spoken about that this is the war that happens before Mashiach's coming. So let's look at the Rambam. The Rambam is the one who talks about this, and let's see what exciting things he might tell us about that war. Leib Moshe, would you like to read text number 9?
Okay. A straightforward interpretation of the prophet's words appears to imply that the war of Gog and Magog will occur at the beginning of the Messianic age. Before this war, a prophet will arise to inspire Israel to be upright and to prepare their hearts, as it is stated in Malachi 3:23. Behold, I am sending you Elijah. Some sages stated that Elijah's coming will precede the coming of Mashiach. All these and similar matters cannot be definitely known until they occur, for these matters are not clarified in the prophet's words.
Thank you, Leib Moshe. So if we were looking forward to some narrative for an apocalyptic movie, the Rambam left us sorely lacking. All we know is that it may happen. If it happens, we'll find out about it, but the Rambam didn't seem too worried about it. Joan, could you read text number 10 for us, please?
Oh, gosh. Some of these names I don't know. Rabbi Yochanan taught in the name of Rabbi Shimon. Suffering a wayward child at home is more difficult than the war of Gog and Magog, for it is stated, a psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. And the next verse reads, God, How numerous are my enemies, many have risen against me. By contrast, regarding the war of Gog and Magog, it's stated, why are the nations in an uproar? Why do the people speak emptiness? It does not state how numerous are my enemies.
Thank you, Joan. So from the Talmud, we see that King David was talking about this war of Gog and Magog and saying, why is everybody making such a big deal out of it? However, at the same time, when he had a son who was not going in the proper path, he was very disturbed. So if we look at our priorities from here, we can definitely see that instead of spending our time worrying about this apocalyptic war, if we spend the time on educating our children, number one, the merit of educating Jewish children is going to lessen whatever kind of bad things would have happened. And number two, we'll have accomplished something good at least. We'll have done something worthwhile. So it seems that this war is not really something that we should be spending too much time worrying about.
If I may, we passed something on page 258 where it starts on with the chapter on Armageddon, and on that page, the last paragraph, in referring to a potential war as the end of times, that Rabbi Shimon believed that there is not much reason for concern.
Yeah. And so it seems that it's possible that something will happen, but it doesn't seem to be that the Jewish people will be very negatively affected by it. And here's another interesting thing from the Shem Mishmuel. He writes that our exile was long enough and hard enough and bad enough that whatever things should have happened from the war were taken care of by the length of the exile. Just like we saw that God told Abraham that the Jewish people are going to be enslaved and afflicted for 400 years. Yet, they were only enslaved and afflicted in Egypt for 210 years. So there's calculations. How do we figure out the 400 years? But the explanation there is because the Egyptians afflicted them and caused such tormented them and afflicted them so, it was much more intense than God had originally planned, that they finished the whole thing in 210 years. The Shem Mishmuel writes, the same thing is with our exile when we talk about the war of Gog and Magog. If there was anything, the bad that was supposed to happen to the Jewish people, we've suffered it with our pogroms, we've suffered it with our inquisitions, we've suffered it with our holocausts, and we don't need to have it happen to us. Yes, Antonina?
Yes, I just wanted to ask about the war of Gog and Magog. Does it actually say that the Jewish people are going to be involved in it? Or maybe two world powers are going to be involved and annihilate each other, but not us, or whatever?
Yeah, all three. It depends. There's not much that's clear, and there are definitely no clear sources that say that the Jews will be involved. So to summarize that is that the Rambam says not much about it. Rabbi Shimon says, don't worry about it. Focus on educating your kids and you'll be much better off with your time. There was a teacher who told her third grade class to write a short paragraph essay. What would you do if you won $1 million in the lottery? And everybody's handing in their paper, and little Jack hands in a blank page. So the teacher says, Jack, why didn't you write anything? Why did you hand in your page empty? He says, because if I won $1 million, I'd do absolutely nothing. So if we look at the physical blessings that are going to take place when the Mashiach comes, so this is a lot what we spoke about in lesson number 1, that there's going to be no more war, no more crime, no more poverty, no more scarcity, no more disability. And the question is, why? What is the purpose? Is the purpose so that we should be like little Jack and do absolutely nothing? I'm going to read text number 11, physical blessings. This is again from the Rambam. The Messianic era is defined as the time in which sovereignty will revert to Israel, and the Jewish people will return to the land of Israel. In those days, it will be extremely easy for people to make a living. What do we have today with the stocks? You sit by your computer and you're making millions of dollars. A minimum of labor will produce tremendous benefits. All right, if your grandmother would come and see you taking something out of the freezer, putting in the microwave, pressing a button, and voila, supper is made. Walking into the store and there's cookies and cakes, and I mean, she would say, "Oh my gosh, it must be Mashiach here. There's cake growing on trees." Right? This is the meaning of our sage's statement that in the future the land of Israel will bring forth ready-baked rolls and fine woolen garments, because all you'll have to do, again, the Rambam is saying this as an allegory, taking this as an allegory, that when you press a button in a factory and, within a few hours, with no work at all, you have clothes coming out, that's a minimal amount of labor producing great
Hardship.
sorry?
Hardship.
Not hardships. It's they're creating lots of stuff. Anyways, my mind's off.
Materialism. Materialism.
Materials. Thank you. The great benefit of that era is that we will experience respite from the oppression that prevents us from doing good. You see, when we're here and fighting for in countries where people have to fight to get a loaf of bread, people have to toil hard in order to make ends meet. They can't be sitting and spending their time in spiritual pursuits. Rather, what happens is that they have to be fighting. So when we're in a situation where we don't have to be working hard for our food, and we don't have to be warding off enemies, there will be a widespread increase of wisdom. As it is stated, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of God. War and battle will cease, as it is stated, nation will not lift up sword against nation. The human lifespan will be lengthened, and here the Rambam says, what's the cause? As a result of the absence of stress and suffering. The Rambam says that's why we're going to live long. Now, here comes the clincher. We do not long and hope for the Messianic era, simply because we desire an abundance of produce and property, or because we wish to ride horses, Lamborghinis, or drink wine to the accompaniment of music, as some confused people think. Rather, our prophets and pious yearned for that era because then the righteous will assemble and good conduct and wisdom will prevail. It will be possible then to observe the entire Torah without worry or fear. So the Rambam says that we're not going to have any miracles, but the world is going to become a great place. And what's the purpose of all this abundance? So that we can be involved in spiritual pursuits. That's what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. We're going to have the Davidic dynasty in place. We're going to have the temple in place. We're going to have the Sanhedrin in place. We're going to not have to worry about any diseases or any wars, any violence. And we will be able to do what?
Study.
We'll have, like we spoke in lessons 2, 3, and 4, Adira B'tachtonim. The world will be spiritually aligned and we will bask in the knowledge of God. Just being one with God.
Well, there's still a miracle there.
Which part?
The miracle would be that wisdom will prevail. And if you look at people today, there's certainly a lack of wisdom. So
What
to
do they
say that
say?
suddenly wisdom will prevail assumes a great deal, and that if that happens, that alone would be a miracle.
They say if ignorance is bliss, there should be a lot more happy people in the world.
Right.
So here comes the almost the final point, which is that of the resurrection of the dead. As we spoke in the beginning of class, let's introduce this with another joke. Fred the miser is on his deathbed and he calls the rabbi. And he says, "Rabbi, here in this little trunk is all of my money. I want you to take it and hold on to it." And the rabbi says, "Well, which kind of charities? What's your philanthropic interests? Where would you like me to distribute this wealth?" And he says, "No, I don't want you to give it anywhere. I don't want you to give it to charity. When you get old, I want you to pass it on to the next rabbi of the community." The rabbi says, "Well, why would I do that?" Fred turns to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, you don't believe in the resurrection of the dead?
I didn't listen.
So
I don't think we got that one.
he wants that the rabbi should keep it for him, that when Mashiach comes and he'll be resurrected from the dead, he'll have his money.
Oh, he will be the rabbi, will he? Okay.
So the only issue that we have so far is that we've spoken about Techias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead. Now that takes a miracle. There's no way that you can have a natural progression. Everything else that we've spoken about so far can be a course of natural progression. Advances in science, advances in political, people getting along with each other. It's possible to believe that everyone is going to get along, but the resurrection of the dead is not possible in any way other than by vast miracle. Yes, Auntie Nina?
Well, people have seen Jurassic Park, so they can understand the concept of just one little loose bone getting the dew of heaven, but they do it in the petri dish, but it's kind of not even so fantastic.
Interesting. That sounds very interesting. Thank you, Auntie Nina. So the interesting thing is that if we look in the last two chapters of Maimonides, which is where he discusses everything about Mashiach, he does not mention the resurrection of the dead. He does mention it elsewhere, though, but in this section he doesn't mention it, which led some people in his times. There was someone in France or Spain, I don't remember who. People came to the conclusion that if the Rambam says, Maimonides says that we take everything in its simple meaning, and if it looks like it's fantastical, it must be an allegory. And they said the same about the resurrection of the dead. They said that they used the Rambam as a proof that the resurrection of the dead is only an allegory and is not real and is not true. So the Rambam actually wrote an entire essay defending his position and explaining what he means and asserting that he believes in the resurrection of the dead. And actually, we've quoted this at least twice in this lesson so far, in this course so far, that the Rambam himself is the one who wrote the 13 principles of faith. And principle number 13 is that you don't believe in Judaism if you don't believe in the resurrection of the dead, quite simply, that the people, everyone who lived, will come back alive. So before we talk about the resurrection of the dead, let's read the Rambam's defense of his position. Text number 12, page 266. It is important to realize that when I stated that certain prophecies are to be understood allegorically, this is not absolute. No prophetic communication informed me that they are allegorical, nor did I receive a tradition from the sages and prophets that these particular matters are parables. Let me explain what brought me to the allegorical approach. I strive to bring harmony between the Torah and human intellect, which is why I explain things in a natural way whenever possible. However, when it is self-evident that the connotation is miraculous indeed, and it is not possible to interpret otherwise, I say that it is a miracle. The bottom line is that regarding specific prophecies about the redemption that do not involve the fundamentals of our Jewish faith, it matters not whether one believes that they are literal or allegorical. We will have to wait for their realization, may it occur speedily in our days, to discover whether these statements refer to actual miracles or are simply allegories for natural changes. So here we have a beautiful nugget. Number one, the Rambam clearly saying that the resurrection of the dead will happen in a literal sense. Number two, we have a context for the Rambam's other statements that we were saying before. The Rambam says here very clearly that it's possible that all the prophecies are true and are to be taken literally. But it doesn't matter. It's possible that they are real. It's possible that they are parables. We don't know, but we'll find out when they happen. They don't have to be real, but they might be. The resurrection of the dead, however, is completely real. And in fact, the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains that there are two stages in the coming of Mashiach. There's the first stage where everything is, like we said in the beginning, Olam Kamin Hago Noheg, where everything is just going as running its course, a natural progression of society until we become a perfect people. And the second stage is where all the miracles happen.
Rabbi,
The Rambam was only talking about the first stage because that's all that's important for Jewish law. The second part is the reward, where all of the people who have lived come back to live again, and that is what we are going to go into next, and that is how we are going to finish up the course. Is so, what's the purpose?
Wait, if I may.
Please.
You said that the resurrection means that people who are dead will come back to life. I thought it was a spiritual resurrection of our soul.
Great question. The answer is that it is a very literal, physical resurrection of the dead, that anyone who died will come back to life in their bodies. There is a debate as to what happens after that. Do we then all die and become spiritual beings, or do we remain alive forever? And that's a question that we'll find out soon.
Yes,
Rabbi,
that has a lot of implications.
I don't see where on page 266 he says absolutely it'll happen. He says that it'll wait for the realization of it, whatever it is.
He basically says if it happens, it happens.
About the prophecies, he says if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But about the resurrection of the dead, he says that it will most definitely happen.
Oh, what? Oh, that's on 268. We didn't read that yet. 266, he doesn't say that.
Get him, Joan.
It's not, it's only a question of
Thank
where.
Thank you. This is okay, so let's continue this the second part.
It's 266.
Thank you. Text number 13. Thank you, Joan.
Okay.
Thank you, Joan. I forgot that it was split into two. But before then, let's just mention that what is the purpose of the resurrection? So there's two reasons for it, and we'll get into those two reasons, and then we'll read text number 13. So the purpose of the resurrection, the basic purpose, is that there are so many Jews who worked very hard in doing mitzvahs in order that the world should become the place that we want it to become. So they deserve a reward. If the reward of their coming is Mashiach, the coming of Mashiach, so then they have to be there also to experience that reward. And it was their body together with their soul that created all the good. Therefore, their body and soul must be resurrected in order to experience that reward. We can take that deeper based on what we explained in lesson number 3. Remember that example we gave of the mountain digging? That the reward is not something extrinsic to the world. Rather, the reward of making the world spiritually aligned is actually that we get to bask in the divine radiance of God, that the world itself becomes a place which is holy and godly. So the point of the resurrection of the dead is not only to give us a reward for the good work we've done, but actually in order to enjoy the fruits of our labor. All of the Jews who died spent a long time making the world into a good place, a happy place, into a godly place. Let them enjoy that world that they worked so hard to make.
Amen.
And it also shows us the point of creation. That the whole purpose is in order to connect to Hashem, not by remaining as spiritual beings.
We can't hear you. I think you're frozen. Anybody got a problem?
No, we can't do it. It has to do it there.
Right. Maybe he's come to Hobart, which is freezing here.
Yeah.
Can somebody message him, please? Maybe he doesn't know.
I don't know how to do both. Oh, nobody else can. We're connected. It sounds like nobody else is.
Oh, right. Joan, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
You're back. You're back. Hey, welcome back.
I am back. Sorry about that. Where did I lose everyone?
The point of creation to connect with Hashem.
Okay, great. Yeah. So the point of connection, the point of creation of the world is not that we should be spiritual and aloof from the world, but the reason why Hashem made it is in order that the physical world should not be distant from him, should not be concealing him. And that is exactly what happens when Mashiach comes with the resurrection of the dead, and we all are here alive in bodies. And that is the greatest proof, or the greatest show of us being here connecting to God spiritually with the closest and most intimate connection while we are alive in physical bodies. Let's read text number 13. The resurrection of the dead will occur as a miraculous event, as we have explained. However, the credibility of such an event can only be based on the words of a prophet. Now, at the time of the giving of the Torah, nearly all of humankind denied the transmission of prophecy of God to humans. They also denied that God could perform miracles, considering them instead acts of magic or trickery. Indeed, the Egyptians denied that Moses performed godly miracles and tried to show that they could turn sticks into snakes by other means. The Jews themselves were influenced by this worldview, evidenced by their expressing astonishment that God revealed himself to them at Mount Sinai, indicating that they had considered prophecy impossible. How then could such a miraculous event that relies exclusively on the belief in prophecy be conveyed to those who were not ready to accept the concept of prophecy or the concept of a miracle? And in the second paragraph, in the next paragraph, he explains how that works, and you can look at the entire epistle, the entire essay, to get the full context for that. So we see clearly over here that the Rambam says that the resurrection of the dead happens as a miracle. And we can start that part now, the part about living godly, living in a physical world, but not being distracted by that world. Living in a physical world that the physical world itself brings us closer to God. That was what we explained at length in lessons 2, 3, and 4, that every mitzvah that we do, when we look at anything in this world, and instead of viewing it as something that could be used for evil, or even something that could be used for neutral means, but we look around the world and all we see are tools for godliness. We see wax, we think about Shabbos candles. We see cows, we think about kosher food, we think about tefillin. Whatever it is that we look around and see, all we think about is about godliness and about what Hashem wants. That is how we can start living a Mashiach lifestyle even now. And here is the takeaway, the grand takeaway from the entire course. But before we get there, someone was trying to explain to me about compound interest. So this is about compound efforts. The efforts of our great-great-grandparents are compounded in each and every generation, and we have no idea when it's going to hit that curve, and we are going to be incredibly, incredibly over the edge, and everything is going to tip for the good. But before we get to the Rambam's explanation of compounded efforts, there was a man, and he was driving through Amish town, and his car drove over the edge of the road and into the ditch, and he's stuck, and there's no one around for miles and miles. To his luck, from behind the bushes, he sees one of the farmers there is going with his horse. His horse's name is Buddy. And so he calls out to this farmer, and the farmer says, "Oh, I can help you get out of the thing." He hitches up his horse to the car, and he says, pull, Carlo, pull. And then he said, nothing happens. He says, pull, Nicole, pull. Nothing happens. He says, pull, Ginger, pull. Nothing happens. Then he says, pull, buddy, pull. And the horse charges forward and pulls the guy's car out of the ditch. And the man says to him, did you not know your horse's name? Why'd you call out the wrong name 3 times? The man says, no, but Buddy's blind. If he thought he was pulling the car himself, he would never even try. So I first told him the names and he got it out himself. So that's what it is when we realize that we are not just blind horses trying to pull it out ourselves, but our efforts are not just individual efforts to bring Mashiach, but are compounded on everything that's happened until now. It gives us a greater enthusiasm in doing that just one mitzvah. Let's look at text number 14. We're going to read it slowly.
Where
The
is
Rambam
it?
writes that you should view yourself at all
What?
times as equally balanced with merits and faults, and view the world similarly, equally balanced with merits and faults. So we have, let's say, like a double scale. The world is equal good and evil, and you yourself are equal good and evil. Therefore, if you perform one mitzvah, you tip the balance because you become to the side of good. As soon as you're 51% good, you tip the side to good. And you go on the side of the 50% good that's already there, and you tip the world to 51% good. You tip the balance, your own and that of all humankind, and affect personal and global deliverance and salvation. Every mitzvah that you do, you never know. It could be the next quarter that you put in the pushka. It could be the next Friday night that you light Shabbos candles. It could be the next time you put on tefillin. It could be the next time that you smile at someone else, that you call someone up and wish them well. That could change the entire world and bring to fruition the last 6 weeks of learning. So before we finish up, I want to share with you our teaser. Next year's courses are out. And here is what they are. Number 1 is going to be in October, called Outsmarting Anti-Semitism. It's hard to outrun it. It's time to outsmart it. Number 2 is going to be in February, Jewish meditation, mindfulness, and spirituality. And in May, we are going to be talking about the values behind Judaism's civil code. What is it that is pushing all of the civil code? Why does Judaism look the way it looks? What are the values that shape Jewish law? And
Yes, and
go ahead, please.
no, you finish what you're saying. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did
That's
want
it.
to say something.
That's
after.
it for that part.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to say, but of course you won't be teaching it because no man shall teach his brother. Right?
That's it. Mashiach will be teaching us these courses himself.
Yeah, truly.
So I want to do what we did last time as well at the end of last course. And I want to ask you, if you were consigned to market this course and you had a friend who you really thought would benefit from this course, and you had 30 seconds or less to tell them why they should sign up for this course, why it's so important and life-changing for them, what would you tell them? What is it? In other words, what is it about this course that made the greatest impact on you? What would you use as your selling point to someone else? Let's take a moment to think about that part, and then we are going to go around the table. Okay, so whoever's ready first can go first. Barry, are you ready?
Yes and no. I can't think of an answer other than to say that you are a delight and you have a wonderful sense of humor, and you make it a pleasure to learn.
Thank you, Barry.
And thank you.
I agree. Beautifully put.
I could say something.
Please go for it, Auntie Nina.
Okay, well, I think I would say that it's it's a bit cliche, it's an eye-opener, but the way I would say it was that it really approaches the whole Jewish question for what are we here for from so many different angles that any question you might come up with, well, it answers it before you can come up with it. And that it's
Wow.
very enlightening.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you, Auntie Nina. That's powerful.
Yeah. So if you're curious as to the meaning of life, you need to come to this course.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joan. Leib Moshe.
Depends if I was speaking to a Goyish person or a Jewish person.
Let's start with the Jews.
If I was going to start with the Goyish.
Start with the Goyim.
If I was speaking to a Goy, I would say, learn what the Mashiach really is. And that's why this course is integral. And if I was speaking to a Jewish person, I would say, you need this course to understand what the Jewish concept of Mashiach is and what will bring about his coming and why is it central to Jewish belief.
Beautiful.
So you say the same thing to both Jew and non-Jew. Really? Is that right?
In different words.
Okay.
What do we say, like at the Pesach Seder? We say we have the 4 different sons and we speak to each of them. We say the same thing and each of them for their own language.
Ah, yes.
Thank you. Thank you all. And before we go, what's one nugget that you found interesting from today's session? If everybody would like to, let's start with Auntie Nina.
Oh, it's that I'm sorry that we have to finish today. I want to start the other course straight away. I want to learn more.
Okay. Barry.
Maybe it's that we're not going to hell and there's some hope in the end.
Okay. Very good, Joan.
I have to be mindful constantly of what I do.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And Leib Moshe.
The importance of doing mitzvahs.
The importance of doing mitzvahs. Thank you. Tati.
I can see why Mami loved your course. And it was also so interesting that you gave a practical demonstration of the resurrection. Everyone was saying, you froze and you disappeared. The next minute you came back.
Yeah.
And Zalmi, was there something that you enjoyed about today's class? Okay, Joan and Leib Moshe, I think this is probably only applicable to you. Mid to late summer, we are planning to have a course on Hebrew reading called Read It in Hebrew. I believe it's 5 sessions. So stay posted for the information about that. It's going to be a course on learning how to read Hebrew.
I know nothing about it. You could take somebody who knows nothing.
Yeah,
absolutely so. Yeah.
This course is put together also by JLI. I have friends who told me that they taught it to their people who didn't know what the Hebrew alphabet looked like and came out at the end of 5 sessions. I think it's 5 sessions reading fluently.
This will be a miracle.
No, it's amazing. It really is a good course.
I have to put a plug over here for my father, who's been teaching people how to read Hebrew for the last 50 years. So
I just
if we
want you
get
to
if we
know-
get stuck anywhere, we know where to turn to the expert.
I just want you to know that it was that type of lesson exactly that caused me to climb out the window of my Hebrew school when I was a little boy and run away.
Oh,
But I'm
my.
looking forward to it.
There's
When is
always a
this?
second chance.
Right.
Is this late August, you say?
I have to look at the dates again. I have in my calendar when I'm supposed to plan it. I haven't yet set the dates.
Not July. I won't be here.
I don't think July. No,
Good,
we're gonna
good.
be busy in July. So it is my fervent wish, and I first want to thank you all for joining us on this beautiful journey. May God bless you all and bring you all blessings and happiness in your life.
Amen.
And may all of our pontifications be vanished and for naught, because we will have the real thing. May it happen already tonight. And let us all say, Amen.
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 Thank you all
Amen.
for joining, and we will see you soon.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you,
Thank you
Rabbi.
so
Thank
much.
you.
And one more thing. We want Moshiach now.
Now.